Live. Hey guys, this is RJ. I'm sitting here with Kevin. We're getting everything going live right now. It's a little bit of a late start. Tonight we're talking about basically Bernie Sanders and then why I hate Gary Johnson. Right now I'm just going to the Bad Dinner Guest Facebook page so I can find this live link.
Hate. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you've got. I mean, I peeked at your notes, so I have some idea what's coming here. But I'm interested to hear your opinion because from what I've talked with you about, it seems like you have a pretty good grasp of, you are a libertarian, so this is supposed to be your candidate. So, I'm pretty excited.
Well,
so if you want to, it's going to take me a second to
sweat.
get it.
We'll just fucking go with it.
Yeah, just want to start filling me in on Nick's opinion here.
Basically, the first thing I wanted to get into is kind of late news now, but last week a poll came out saying nearly half of all Bernie millennials would vote third party. It was actually 39% Clinton, 13% Trump, and then 48% said they'd vote for the third party. It was only like a couple thousand people. It was on a Yik Yak poll, so I don't know how much I would trust it. But the one thing I did notice, even on that, is that it didn't ask which third-party candidate they'd support. But you can't really ask a Bernie supporter a difficult question like that. I mean, that's assuming they've looked much beyond the cover. But we all know that, like, in any given poll like that, fucking Yoda will pull at a decent percentage, and that's in any election just because of the lack of like options that they give us. You know what I mean? So anytime that they do that in those polls, they just kind of insert other essentially. But basically, what I'm getting at is I'm not buying it. I said it last week. I think most of that 48% is just going to end up not voting. The Bernie campaign, much like the Obama campaign, played on the excitement of like being part of the crowd. You know what I mean? Like basically on the hope of a better future that was just going to be handed to them at the expense of the taxpayer.
Yeah, I don't think many people understood exactly how that plan was supposed to work.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm not saying that I understood exactly how that plan would work, but
I don't think anybody did.
I think
but
that was part of the problem, wasn't it?
And now the problem is like there's nobody left for them to get excited over like they did for Obama, or even Ron Paul like they did. Bernie he took what Obama did and he ran with it, and somehow we still have Clinton. But that getting the youth votes used to matter. That's what they were all worried about.
Yeah.
And now it's just. But the problem is that these people basically bought into Bernie because he was exciting. It's what their friends were doing. They didn't really have to think about it. And if they had to think about it, like we were saying, there's absolutely no way they would have considered voting for him just off the like delusional economic policies the man proposed. Like that alone should be enough. Like, but most of us know that, I would think, or I don't know, man.
I can back your point on that one a little bit because I was excited about Bernie at the beginning when I first was pitched him by some friends and stuff, and you got the whole group of friends that everybody's feel the burn, and they've got all these great sound pieces to say. So I got excited and I started doing my research, and the more I did my research, the more I was like, man, this might be my worst case scenario. It might be this guy winning, if I'm being honest about it, because some of the things he was proposing, even
they were excited over.
And I'm like, okay, even if he does everything he says for you, he's giving an awful lot of power to the next guy, an awful lot of stuff.
I wasn't even like,
and that was only one aspect of it for me. Like, I don't want a guy who's going to come in and just be like, so we're going to just sort of socialize all of these programs, and then it's going to be on us to take care of it. I've seen. We've all seen what the government doesn't always do a great job of regulating some of these things that they're in charge of. So
no doubt,
that's not a quick fix.
Yeah, but the thing is like I was saying, I think they got excited over him so topically, and maybe that's why Hillary ended up getting the nomination. Maybe there was enough core supporters out there that read the news. Like even the most liberal of like Democrat economists out there, Paul Krugman, he came out and he blatantly said that in both cases his position is disturbing, talking about Bernie Sanders, not just because it's politically unrealistic to imagine that we can get that kind of radical overhaul he's proposing, but also because he takes his own version of cheap shots. And what he's saying by he takes his own version of cheap shots is that it's topical, and that's what I got from it. He doesn't delve into he's feeding you ear candy. You know what I mean? He even says, like, and I believe it, he's a fundamentally decent guy, but he runs with everything, you know what I mean? Like, everything that he knows people want to hear, but he never, like, encourages them to look into why it would work for them. Because he doesn't encourage you to read, he doesn't encourage you to, like, his platform was the most topical thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. I agree with what you were saying there. It wasn't even sort of, not only was it not encouraging a why, but even necessarily providing a how often. It was, a lot of sound bites is what it seemed like to me. Just a lot of, like you said, very topical.
Yeah. My problem is like, if they're that easy to sell on a person, you know what I mean? Like, they were just able to hate what was going on in the background, which I believe that's why they didn't want to vote for Trump or Hillary. It's just because those two people are so good at targeting each other that all they were getting was the negative of both, that they were willing to go to the one guy that wouldn't even talk shit about his Democratic opponent. Like, on stage, He would say, I'm the only person on the stage that's this. He wouldn't say Hillary Clinton, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he was always just talking about himself and not, like,
he would never make it on this show because he's way too PC. Yeah. And I honestly, so I kind of am of the opinion, and this is a little outside, but I think Bernie might have been the best thing to happen to Hillary in this election, because one thing that Bernie and Trump showed us is, like, there's a lot of people that are a little upset with the establishment.
Right.
They wanted to go anti-establishment. It just depended on what side of the coin they already felt they were on. To me, that was the biggest split, because you have a lot of Bernie and Trump supporters, at least in our generation, saying virtually the same thing, and then hating the other one essentially over social issues and not really understanding either's economic or foreign policy at all.
Yeah.
And it was all just
only
sort
one
of...
who has a foreign policy other than turn something into glass. But it's basically essentially the same thing. She just sounds nicer about it.
Yeah. and so I think that her best friend was Bernie, because had there not been a Bernie on the Democrat side, would all of the anti-establishment people just immediately swung Trump and put her in a bit of a predicament?
No.
Maybe not. Just a thought.
I don't think they would have gone Trump because of the sound bites of him sounding a little bit like a racist or a lot like a racist, depending on how your swing there. But, like, the only person that doesn't think he sounds like a bigot is a person that doesn't want to admit it, because he comes across in a lot of his statements as a bigot. What people don't understand is he has other speeches out there that he doesn't, and he has other speeches out there where he makes some sense. I think his issue is, and his biggest issue is that the sound bites that got out, because, like we were talking about it earlier, like, his campaign was funded by the media. He didn't really do a whole lot of it out there. And there's a lot of bigots in this nation. Like, it's a fact. And that's not, like, so be it. They're allowed to be bigots. But there's a lot of them out there. And those are the people that turn out to the polls, though. Like, a lot of the bigots turn to be the people that aren't employed or have those kind of, like, the ability to do that. Generally, they're older, that kind of thing there. So they get to turn out in the polls. It's not a lot of the generation that can't go out to those primary polls.
Right.
And most of the primary voters are elderly. So things like that we might see change in the future, I think, I hope. But right now, like, that's still a massive appeal in the primaries. I think that's why he won the primaries. Because the older generation wants a tougher, like, generation still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I see happening there. A lot of people see, like, Illuminati shit and stuff like that, but it makes sense to me that he got the primary win by those sound bites.
I mean, if you're going for toughness and it's between you and Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz, then you probably have the edge there.
Yeah. Jeb Bush's face looked like a crybaby. He never looked like he wasn't sad, to me at least.
I just always got the feeling when I saw him on stage. Like, remember when he begged for the applause? He was like, "Oh, come on!"
Yeah.
He had his speech, and then he was like, will you guys please clap
fucking
for me?
Ron
It was
Paul
like,
got booed on stage, and he was like, "No, listen." Like he didn't you know what I mean? Like he was just like, "I'm still going to tell you about this. Is what you need to hear."
Yeah.
That's not his exact words. Somebody's going to look up that video later and be like, "That's not what he said." No, like it was close enough though.
That's all right. Just next time I'll have it queued up. So
we didn't know we were going to.
We didn't see ourselves going on that tangent,
but like, okay, people that are so like topically engaged, they hear the Democrats are evil, the Republicans are evil, and most of them think that a libertarian's selfish. So like, yeah, like you see Gary Johnson like moving up in the polls slightly because I think it's the same reason Yoda would move up. Nobody's heard anything about him yet, and I think he's going to get cast as that selfish libertarian. Like they've done such a good job of showing it's all me. We're saying no, it's all about like I want to do me. Like I don't want your government programs. Like personally, like I find myself aligning with their agenda more than anybody else's, and I qualify for most government benefits at this point in my life. I don't go for them.
Yeah.
Like people don't realize that though. Like they want that, but they want you to want to work as hard as they do. They don't want you wanting handed something at the taxpayer's expense.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. I just don't see him turning out for Gary Johnson once he gets cast as that dirty libertarian. And then the media is going to throw in the Tea Party on top of it if you believe that the media goes one way or the other, which we mostly tend to believe. Yeah. They're either Democrat or Republican. So they're both going to have a reason not to want Gary Johnson. The problem they've been having trouble with recently, though, is there's been a lot of these talk show hosts, like, going the other direction. You know what I mean? They've been saying, like, they hate both candidates.
Yeah,
and they had the same problem with Ron Paul, though. Ron Paul got on a lot of shows, and the fucking people, like, much to the producer's chagrin, was like, makes some sense. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't hate on him the way he wanted. But I don't think Gary Johnson can do that.
No, I think if he got brought on to be filleted or to be fodder, I think he would become said fodder. I don't think he would be able to stand up. Especially, I noticed in your notes, and you'll know what I'm talking about, but how he misquoted a direct principle, and I don't want to ruin it. You know, I'll let you get to it when you get to it, but it's just sort of along the same lines where it's like if he really was questioned, it might come to light that he maybe doesn't even really know what's going on anymore. Like he might not be as libertarian as he was just.
So he's not going to get his own basis vote. Yeah, definitely going to get more Gary Johnson hate on this. But yeah, not a big fan of his. But yeah, but I don't really think they're going to go for him. Is basically what I'm getting at. I'm not buying it. I don't think they're going to vote for third party. And like the only name that stands out is Gary Johnson's, like we were just saying. And like he's trying really hard to run as that socially liberal. Well, he says it. I'm a socially liberal, fiscally conservative, or I believe most Americans are like me, socially liberal, fiscally conservative. And then he's running with Bill Weld. But he's not really fiscally conservative, like we were just saying. Like he's not going to appeal to the Republican crowd, I don't think. He just came out. Well, the article's just now circulating where he came out, basically in favor of a universal minimum wage, but not a minimum wage based on like you work this much per hour. Like everybody gets handed so much money, and the libertarian argument. Because it was in a libertarian magazine, and the article was recirculating now because a young journalist wrote about him. And basically what he was saying was it's not a bad thing, the universal minimum wage, as a libertarian. And I can't grasp that concept, but what he was saying was because it saved money, which it stands to save money, but what they're ignoring is the idea of inflation. And if every business out there knows there's free money circulating in the economy, those prices are going to go up. So those base level products right now are going to go up significantly. So people that actually work for a living are definitely going to notice that hit. And I think that I was just listening to fucking Jason Stapleton today. He's a major libertarian voice out of Texas that a lot of people follow. And he was saying because it was, it furthered the libertarian agenda, basically. I mean, that wasn't his words because he acts like he's against the funneling that, like he would rather, because he's not a big Gary Johnson supporter either.
Yeah, okay.
But so he stands out against it, but he still wants to further the libertarian agendas, and he's willing to compromise essentially because it would save money and end some of the bureaucracy. But what I see happening there is you're starting a new bureaucracy. So just like the Social Security net that we have now started out extremely small. I can't remember it, but if you guys check out For a New Liberty by Rothbard, if you like anything we're talking about, he dives in the numbers from the 70s. But essentially, like, once welfare started, within 10 years, it was the bloated system we have now. It was starting on its consistent jumps. And once big government gets a hold of a program, there's still going to be the incentive to get people enrolled. So they're going to be either pushing to raise that universal minimum wage because, there's inflation catching up with it, just like it does now. At least now it's controlled because you have housing vouchers, so people that don't work have to live in slums like we live in. And they have food stamps. So we hear people are getting fucking lobster dinners on food stamps. Those people that are doing drugs. Like, that's what those people are. Food stamps aren't really enough to fucking feed a large family off of. They're really not. They're not what everybody makes it out to be. There's some people that can game the system in order to get additional benefits. But for the majority of Americans that are as close to honest as, like, most Americans are, which I believe is pretty honest, like, they're getting not really that much, you know what I mean? Like, they're subsisting off of things like the Salvation Army, that thing there as well. Fuck you. But essentially, like, and those are the people that aren't gaming the system. Most people are fucking doing other shit with it, though. Like, in the area that we're in, at least, we see a lot of that. There's in the rural communities, I think, is where you see the most people doing it right.
Okay.
Most often. I mean, here you probably could fucking find or buy a fucking EBT card in a minute. Like, it wouldn't take you very long. You know what I mean? So, like, people are gaming the system there.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I used to work with a guy in Toledo who, when he was short on payday, would trade like $40 from his $40 in food stamps for $20 cash. Or whatever, you know. Right. And so I've seen it get played with a little bit, so I'm sure. But I mean, that goes with just about anything and everything. Yeah, but I'm sure there's a guy right now working in the stocks at Walmart that just put something in his trunk, you know. Yeah, no doubt. Somewhere, everybody's screwing somebody over, you know. There's always a couple. I don't think people realize how many people are on food stamps, though, either. Because there's, like, and that's why I think the majority of people on it don't game the system a whole lot, because I've just seen a lot of more people that don't than do. I actually am one of those people probably who don't realize it, because I had a really interesting moment today. I came home and someone was knocking on the door, and I went to get it, and it was two people going through offering free phones. Like, hey, the Obama phone. See how quick that grew. Yeah. Do you have your free phone yet? And I was like, no, but I have a phone. And then she continued, it's, well, if you haven't filled out your application, whatever, we can get you a free phone. And I was like, well, I don't understand. I have a phone. I don't understand. She's like, well, are you not on Medicaid? And I was like, oh no, I'm not. Well, look at her neighborhood though. Well, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, they were going legitimately door to door, and they were surprised when I told them I didn't need it. So that sort of was a perspective changer for me today, which is coincidental, because then now here we are having this conversation. It's not like I planned on them to come and pitch to me today, but it kind of resonated with me. Like, I must not be aware of exactly how common this is when they're shocked that I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of that. And they're probably looking around the neighborhood like, what? You know? Do me a favor. Next time you're at the fucking grocery store, something like that, either get in the longest line and watch people check out with their grocery carts. You will be surprised how many people you pull out an EBT card, and they all look the same. Just Google image search an Ohio EBT card, and then watch for that thing to get slid. Okay. It will surprise the shit out of you. But I don't doubt it. I don't know. I grew up in like churches and shit, and I guess you did too. So I saw like the thriftiness, but it was in a more rural community. So the people that were on it were generally also shopping at the Salvation Army and Goodwill. You know what I mean? Right. And like, we live in a different neighborhood where they're fucking going to the corner store and buying 16 bags of chips and 2 sodas. But that's those people's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, like, exactly. Where I come from, they would buy potatoes and fucking chicken and shit like that and make meals and things like that. But fuck it. Either way, like, as a libertarian, like, essentially we're against those programs. I mean, as a whole, just because they're funded by the taxpayer. So it's stolen money being redistributed. Yeah. And what that has done is it's inflated those essential markets. So what's helped deflate that is taxes going to big agriculture.
So we're funding it from both ends. You know what I mean? So we don't see a lot of the EBT money that ends up in EBT because a lot of the foods that we buy are also subsidized on the other end. So we're paying farmers to grow this and that, and that's what keeps our fucking grocery costs low and why we export so much. There was a time where we were paying them not to farm. That doesn't happen anymore. It's basically a rumor now. Okay. There might be a couple states where it happens that I don't know about, but federally speaking, it's not a thing anymore. I've done enough farmers installs to at least know that much.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but
I did not. That is
there's still an alpaca tax up in the city, though.
Really?
Talking about government programs like not going away. Back when they used alpaca wool to make uniforms, they subsidized it so a lot of people would farm alpacas. After the war ended, there wasn't really the need for it anymore, but there's enough congressmen that have alpaca farms in their district that they can't get rid of the subsidy for it.
Really?
Yeah.
So they just have it for
no basically, yeah. So that's why I fucking did an install the other day, and he was talking about trying to get a tax credit for the crazy high property taxes in his area by agriculture. I was like, looking to see if there's an alpaca tax credit in Ohio, because if you live in a district with that, and there's a podcast out there you can listen to, it's probably Planet Money or Freakonomics that like dives into it, which is funny because they lean liberal. But like it's talking about how that shit sticks around, and you're just like, every other fucking thing we tell you that's going to happen with, you're like, no, we'll revisit it. We haven't revisited the fucking Constitution without the Congress like being overwhelmed by a special lobby or violence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Things like that happen, or they claim that a revisitation will happen, and then it's just no, because the next branch, the next wave of problems comes in, and then shit gets just thrown to the back burner. Yeah,
but the times it's changed, a libertarian will point out, because like an anarcho-capitalist kind of person still believes like in common law, which is essentially what the Constitution is establishing as common law, as has been understood in most societies. Every time that they've changed it or added to it, where it sits today is the repeal of prohibition. That's an improvement on personal liberty. The time it went wrong is when they reduced that personal liberty. You look at the right for women to vote, personal liberty, black vote. You just like, but every time that it's been regressive, it's done damage, and they've had to go back and do it. But progressives claim that it was progress for the repeal, and women's vote was kind of a Republican issue too. But anyway, like what I was basically getting at is that at the end of the day, they're not going to vote for Gary Johnson, I don't think.
So do you think then that they're just going to just kind of sit at home and not participate, or do you think there's going to be a small percentage of this group that actually tries to maybe protest the whole concept, or what are they going to do?
Like, there's not a whole lot of other parties that stand out that anybody knows about, and most of them are like basically a libertarian party that also wants religious stuff in it or some other crazy shit. And then there's the Green Party, which is a super liberal party, which I'm sure you heard about in high school, the one-party issues. Mm-hmm. That's basically what the Green Party is, and it's always been. But, like, I think most of them are just going to go to the bar. But I guess if I'm wrong, and, like, they do turn out to the polls for the third party, and they vote for the front runner of the third party, Gary Johnson, like, I think it will be for no other reason than they recognize his name and that they don't want Trump or Clinton. And I don't think somebody is going to make it clear to the poll on that reason alone. But, like, I guess imagine that they do. Like, if anything, you'd think that'd be a win for me because they vote libertarian. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it's not really
like a sneaky way to get him in there. I don't think that's going to happen. But, like, if they do, and, like, imagine he convinces them just by getting enough ads out there on his agenda. Like, if a democratic socialist will like be willing to vote for a libertarian, in quotes, agenda, at least the agenda that he portrays, like that should be an instant red flag.
Yeah,
like,
because that clearly shows that you don't know what in the hell you're even thinking about. That you don't. One of my favorite moments in watching this political sideshow has been watching a Trump supporter interview a bunch of Bernie supporters at a rally that I wasn't in attendance at, but I waited in the line. I hung out.
Oh, you were going to go to a Trump rally?
No, I was going to go to a Bernie rally with some friends, and I hung out in the line for like 2 hours and then just said screw it and went home. But I got to see some amazing stuff, and there were these 2 Trump supporters that were interviewing people that were in the line, and then one guy was asked what democratic socialism meant, and his initial response was...
And he was in line for the rally.
He was in line for the rally, and the Trump supporter asked him to define democratic socialism, and he immediately said, well, democratic socialism to me means... And she cut him off immediately. No. Terms have definitions, and I want to know what democratic socialism means. I don't care what your opinion is of it. I want you to tell me what it means. And not a single person that I saw could stand away from... They kept just going back to, well, I don't know the exact definition, but this is what it means to me. It's like, well, that's freaking irrelevant, because you're not voting based on what your opinion of this is. You're voting it based on what his opinion of it is, okay?
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter what you think it means. You should probably at least be able to know what he says it means.
Yeah.
You know, and it just blew my fucking... And that's when I knew... That's when I realized I was standing in a line of a cult and that I better not drink the Kool-Aid.
It's a death cult. It's a fucking death cult. If Paul Krugman will say his economic policies are ridiculous, this is a man that stands that you need increased inflation because he supports the Fed. Like, we can all see the Fed's going to crash. Like, people slowly are losing the illusion of the thread. The Fed. Jeez, I should call it the thread. It's such a fucking thin line.
Right? That's the next episode.
The thread. But, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like most people look into the message of, like, each party. I feel like the older generation still has the time to watch the news and shit like that. And we're too busy on Facebook reading memes.
Yeah,
and I think that's the typical. And that's
news.
Yeah. Well, I know his opinion on it. That's as much as you hate the 2-party system. The one thing that you need as a party in a fucking democratic system is you need a fucking platform. You need something that people can understand and compare. We might not still read newspapers, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a few specific issues.
Yeah.
But what Bernie Sanders did right is not have a history and not say things. So he didn't have a history on the issues really, except for liberal issues that liberals always swing toward, and then the economic issues, he doesn't have a fucking history. And then, luckily, he always voted anti-war, except for when it came to funding the military, because as much as Democrats claim to be pro-war, they're completely cool with funding the military.
Right, yeah, that's both sides of that, you know, they play in both ends. That's usually one of my problems usually with the run-of-the-mill Democrat is...
And Hillary Clinton
is
constantly been war. And then secret wars, and then supporting countries that may have funded wars, and she just has too long of a track record, whereas Bernie has at least came out of fucking saying, I'm not in support of wars, and then he's never really been in the position to dictate the starts of wars either, but I don't think he would. I don't see him as that kind of guy.
I'm not, I don't know. That was one of the things that scared me about him was, like, I couldn't know that for sure, though, you know? You don't, like you said it yourself, he's never been in a position to have the kind of influence on that.
Yeah.
So we're just grasping at straws when it comes
You're assuming
to
by what he comes out and says that he probably wouldn't do it, just he's good old Bernie. But I think he would still fund the shit out of the military. I really do. Yeah,
I don't see how you on one hand would promote all these other government programs and then think that you're going to cut military dollars. I mean, I wouldn't see that. To me, the thing that scared me about him was he wanted to do all these things. You know, he's not gonna. So they're not going to take that. They're not going to take from what they have already, the structure they've already built. You know, so they're not going to make anything smaller to expand these other things. So to me, I just saw the whole system just growing and growing, potentially getting into something that could get out of control. Should we someday vote the absolute wrong person in. With all that power at their fingertips.
So suppose there's been enough media, like, I guess, that they will not vote for Hillary or Trump, but they still turn out to the polls and they vote for fucking Bernie Sanders and Bill Weld. Like, again, that should sound great to me. I'm not...
You mean Gary?
Who'd I say?
You said Bernie Sanders.
Jesus Christ. Essentially, I mean, when you come out for that fucking basic minimum wage for everybody, you may as well be Bernie Sanders, in my opinion. It's fucking ridiculous. You're not a libertarian. But, like, he says most of the right things, at least topically, and some of the fucking libertarians are willing to buy into that shit even out there, at least the ones that are making it into the newsfeed I read. But, like, he says a lot of the right things for the most part to get the other libertarians, and I think that's why so many people are willing to post articles trying to push him. Like, I was a big fan of Austin Peterson. Austin Peterson and Gary Johnson are totally different characters, but Austin Peterson, he's a party man too. Essentially, like, he's been a big backer of fucking Gary Sanders, and like, he used to be that guy. He was kind of like a fucking, I hate to constantly bring him up, but he kind of came up to me a little bit like Ron Paul. You know what I mean? Like, he was principled, he stood on it, like, he was willing to say the things you didn't want to hear. The issue he had, and the only issue I saw with him, was that he wasn't pro-choice, and I think it was extremely early that he wasn't pro-choice, if I recall. Okay. And where the liberal vote went more with Ron Paul was he was, like, a little bit later in it, in my understanding. Essentially, he saw, like, was, if I remember his speech right, and it might not have been his exact party position or his platform position, but essentially it was, if you can save the fetus, if that thing can live outside, I called it a thing, but if it can live outside the womb, you should not be able to abort it. Like, a doctor shouldn't have to kill it. You know what I mean? So at the point that it can survive on its own, it becomes basically, I guess you would, a person, you know what I mean? But not just a person, like a sovereign being. It's no longer a leech, essentially, in my language, not his. Yeah, right. But it essentially, like, it's a person, it has rights, is what I'm trying to get at. I don't really know where fucking he stands on this, Gary Johnson I'm talking about here. But on a lot of the other issues, again, he comes across to me like on the wrong side of him, I guess is what I'm getting at. And that's why it's such a red flag to me if he would pull these people out to the polls somehow. But, you know, he might have said enough of the right liberal things to get the youth vote still. I don't know. Gary Johnson, or not Gary Johnson, I hate to constantly bring him up, but Ron Paul got the youth vote out there by saying the right things. I think you can do it on the principles, but
I think we might even be to the point where he doesn't necessarily need to say the right things so much as if he just kind of stays quiet and lets the hype build around him. Like, he might just be in a position where the less he says, the better, because clearly, from what I've seen, our generation doesn't. Not, and I hate to be this broad, but in general, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are really even paying that much attention. It seems the thing that has blown my mind the most about this election process is this is the most emotion-driven election I've ever seen in my life. It's not even. Yeah. I don't see hardly any logic applied to the situation anymore, and it just sort of blows my mind.
The more you talk about it, the more I can see him fucking support, and it's fucking scary, dude. Now you got me kind of worried. Maybe worried. They might turn out. I don't think it'll be enough, but it might get them to the fucking main stage.
Well, what is it about people that they see they have to sort of just attach themselves to a leader? There aren't enough independent thinkers in our world today, unfortunately, or for some reason they crave this sort of hive mind situation where it's like, yeah, we need to just come in a group and this guy will speak to me in a cadence and he'll hold his fingers together and, you know, use his Jedi mind tricks with his hands, and I'll get really excited and then I'll go do his
like I was saying. Exactly. Fucking vote for Yoda. But, like, even if he draws in the liberal vote enough to get to the main stage to win the election and actually get there, he's going to have to get the Republican vote, the fiscally conservative vote, especially saying some of the things that he's came out and said. And, like, if you look at his record on the budget in New Mexico, when he came in around 1995, their budget was $4.5 billion. When he left in 2003, it was $7.7 billion. Like, he inherited a debt of $1.8 billion, and then when he left, it was $4.6 billion. Like, I don't see you saying that's fiscally conservative. He's literally the only governor of 22 in either party who filed for a presidential primary in the last 2 decades. Except for one exception, it was a Democrat from Iowa. He's the only one that has matched or posted that big of a raise in his budget. Like, you can't stand against that crowd and look fiscally conservative. That's going to get pointed out by Trump, and he's going to say, like, that's not a libertarian. So libertarians are going to hear that, and then he's going to say that's not a fiscally conservative. So your core Republican voter that might swing that way is going to hear that. They're going to see right through them to the same Democratic bullshit, or not Democratic bullshit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to see that. And, like, he's came out and said, like I said, he says some of the right things. He says he balances budget, but, like, he still managed to add to the debt. Like, the only person that as president, like, none of them have fucking touched him, like, in raising the debt for the federal budget. Like, as a state governor, percentage-wise, he raised it more than any fucking, the worst presidents we look at. So they're going to look at Obama as a Republican. They're going to say, fucking Obama, like, right now, he's only raised the budget, like, I think it's like 1.5%. It's 1.81% he's raised the federal budget.
Okay.
But we're talking in billions now, so it looks fucking huge.
That's a big 1%.
But when it's...
when you look at
it.
Yeah.
But in comparison, like, the way the federal budget's ballooned, his state budget ballooned, like, tenfold. Fucking ridiculous. Like, they're going to point that shit out. But, like, he gets to still claim that he, like, balanced the budget because in New Mexico, they already prohibit an operational spending deficit. Basically, what that means is that they can have a budget that's openly in the red, or they can't have a budget that's openly in the red, I guess I should say, which, like, Medicaid and Social Security can do that. But either way, like, if you can't have a budget that operates in the red, like,
then you're going to come up with a way to make it be in the black.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. In New Mexico law, you're allowed to, like, their budget's considered balanced or in the black if it's believed that they can pay for the shit. And that's not pay for the shit by, like, providing a product to you, like, that you want to buy and being like, hey, buy this shit. We're going to give you this if you do. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally just reaching in the taxpayer's pocket. So, like, he can claim to, like, have balanced the budget, but they can project their budget against, in, like, projected revenue. So if they project that they're going to be able to get this much money, so they can believe they're going to pass these levies, they can believe they're going to pass these tax bills, then they can put it in the budget and it's in the black. And as long as you get those things passed, it still ends up in the black. And, like, and that's why I don't think, like, the fiscally conservative Republicans are going to come out, because I think that shit's going to get out there about him. Because, like, even though he can claim, like, that's like if you have a credit card and you just keep maxing it out, but you always make your interest payments. You know what I mean? So they keep giving you your fucking limit higher and higher, but you're paying your interest. So they know they're going to get that money anyway, which is what the Fed's doing. But, like, they know they're going to get their money anyway. So you don't call them, like, you wouldn't call them fiscally conservative because they still keep spending money they don't have, and then they just keep paying interest on it.
Yeah.
Except instead of paying interest, they're just increasing the amount of money they pull out of your wallet. And, like, I guess, like, the diehard Johnson supporter might say that, like, he didn't have a whole lot of control over the money because the state legislator does. For the state's budgets, the legislator gets to dictate that. But, like, he still claimed it, you know what I mean? Like, he still, instead of coming out and saying, like, I tried doing this and these are the programs, and, like, that your corrupt state legislator, like, would not allow these programs, your corrupt state legislators what passed all this, like, at least you would have something to stand on. But instead what he does is he just touts that, like, you know, the good part about it, the fact that he, like, balanced the state budget every year. Like, he touts that part of it, not the way it had to be done. He doesn't show you the way the sausage is made, like you like to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I always bring him up, but it's like, so far the only true libertarian I see that's made it as far as they made it. But that's what Ron Paul would do. He would just tell you how the fucking sausage was made. And that's why he got booed sometimes. But he said it. He would come out and tell you, like, this, it's ugly, like, but this is what it gets you to. You know what I mean? Like, he would tell you, no, I'm going to end Social Security. I want to end these benefits. Like, he would reference people more so than anything that said that stuff. Gary Johnson's not very well read either, but Ron Paul was, and he would say these things. You know what I mean? Like, he would, but he would go on to tell you, and that's why no, listen, like, this is what it's going to do for you, and these how these programs, like, before the welfare state, there wasn't just, like, a shit ton of vagrants living in the street. Like, that wasn't a thing. Yeah. It starts and then it balloons, like they kept saying with his fucking minimum, like, living wage.
Okay.
I don't know, but, like, he also created like, for fucking the film industry, if they came to his state and made a movie, he promised for every $1,000 they spent, they would be handed a $250 check straight from, like, the taxpayer again. Like, so for No Country for an Old Man, I like looked up how much that movie cost. It cost $25 million to make. That means like essentially his state paid them $25,000 to make that movie there. Their thought is like you'll get that back in sales tax, and it'll bring all this additional money here because Hollywood will come here.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't happen. Like Hollywood didn't move to New Mexico. You know what I mean? Like,
No. Yeah.
They're still in Hollywood. They came there and
yeah.
set up what they needed to set up to get that tax credit, and then they left. I mean, wasn't No Country for Old Men a pretty small budget? You know more about film.
$25 million is not a big budget. Yeah. No Country for Old Men was, I think, viewed. Yeah, it was a more viewed as an indie film. I mean, I believe. I want to say. Man, I'm gonna sound bad if I'm wrong here.
Did it not have a soundtrack?
I believe, yeah, it had a soundtrack.
Please look that up. I swear to God, the reason I thought that movie lasted so long, a guy told me once, is because there was no background music. Like, my first job ever.
Well, it might not have had lyrical music, but it definitely had.
Did it? Maybe that was a different movie. God, I wish I knew what his name was. But a guy I worked with, I was like, it was a great movie, but it seemed so fucking long. And it was fucking, I thought that.
Yeah, soundtrack. 2007, incomplete list. I should have went back.
That's funny. I don't know. It might have been a different movie, or maybe he was just making shit up because he was older than me.
But now that I mention it, I mean, now that you mention it, that's what I meant to say. I don't think it had a lot of music to think about it, but it definitely. There isn't a movie out today that doesn't take advantage of the subtle overtones and stuff, and a nice little crescendo on the keyboard when something's about to happen. Like, you might not notice it because you get so immersed when you're, especially with the surround sound and all those effects. But yeah, most of the time, that's the beauty of that subtlety, is you don't even notice the effect it's having on you. But the sounds will definitely add to it. That's a random little side bit, but yeah, that budget-wise, that's not huge. If they had gotten, let's say, if they shot the Avengers over there, that would have put everybody out a pretty penny, I imagine.
Right.
Because we were talking about building the bottom halves of building a car that basically is rigged to not. It just has a seat for a driver, and then it's just got this big ass camera rig on it. Like
that ain't cheap.
No, that's not. And they shut down downtown.
Oh yeah,
for instance, they've done that here. They've done that here.
Talk about a fucking lobby interest. They can fucking pay enough money to shut down a public street. How is that a public fucking street? Oh, you're gonna divert traffic a fucking hour so fucking the Avengers can get shot on this block? Yeah, you're really doing me a favor. Yeah. Right?
And meanwhile, I'm paying for them to come here. That had to feel good.
Yeah, no doubt. Jesus fuck. But like, suppose like everybody, like the libertarians I've heard, the people that are from Bernie Sanders' campaign that have started looking at fucking Gary Johnson, like the one thing I hear them saying like is if he gets that 15%, like we were talking to him the other night, and he was like, well, if he gets to that 15%, he'll qualify for like free taxpayer money. A libertarian wouldn't want that taxpayer money.
Yeah. Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, again, that's stolen money. Like, you're taking that from somebody and putting it in my pocket. You know what I mean? And essentially, you and I are paying a person that we may or may not support to stand on that stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, a libertarian is against that like kind of program.
Everything I've heard from you as a libertarian is telling me that would not be something.
Again, I tried. There's libertarians out there that disagree with me. Like, it's a fact, and they still hold the badge. But maybe you can still steal from people and be for personal liberty. I don't know. I use slavery way too loosely, I'm told by some of my super liberal friends. Like, I see if you don't own yourself, basically you're a slave. And, like, that seems hyperbolic. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, Rothbard makes a lot of fun of the people because, like, either you own, like, everybody owns a percentage of you, or, like, you dictated it, and then it's, like, a self-funded class system. So, like, and if you break it down to what percentage you own of me, it's, like, absolutely ludicrous. But only so many of us fucking turn out to vote, so really the people that turn out to vote, which elect candidates are owned by certain lobbies. And that's how I see control coming, whereas you kind of come from a conspiracy theory level. I think it all comes down to people that can vote and the people they vote for being in the pockets of free money.
Okay.
But, fucking, like, you heard about his Nazi cake I'm just assuming.
I've heard about this Nazi cake. I have yet to see. Tell me about it, and I'm going to put it up for people to see here.
So essentially, like, he came out saying that if you were a Jewish baker, I mean, it was a fucking stump question, but these are the questions he's going to get asked. So, like, I don't want him out there spreading this message as a libertarian because he's going to get crushed. Like, I can't see a social justice warrior getting behind this. He literally came out and he said that, yes, a Jewish baker, or it might have been a Jewish florist, but I'm pretty sure it was a baker, should have to bake a Nazi cake for a Nazi if that's what was ordered. Like, they shouldn't be able to turn away the business. And I think they were getting to it as, like, you shouldn't be allowed to turn away a homosexual from your business or a black from your business, that kind of thing. The only way that fucking slavery and then Jim Crow thrived was through the corrupt legal system. In a libertarian society where you believe in personal liberty, you don't have that power of control over somebody to where you can dictate that society has to have these things. So I'm not saying some business owners didn't want that kind of shit, just like some business owners still are stupid enough to not want gay money. Like, but I don't think it would be as prevalent without the powers that are given by the state. I want to remove those powers. I think that if you don't have them, that society is going to function in basically the way that brings in the most dollars, and that's through cohesiveness. So even the bigots shut their mouths. I want them to do that, like, after opening them, though. Because, like, the only way racism and shit like that thrives is when it's handed down in silence. Mm. Like, if you hear to keep quiet about it right now because it gets blown up. But, like, if the people that actually hold these views, like, get out there and say it, and then people, like, hear it, they're going to start getting called out for it. And, like, eventually either they're going to think about it or their kid that's here and it's going to think about it rather than believe it until they're old enough to open their mouth and they've already made up their mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But, like, kids know to keep quiet about it because their parents are keeping them quiet about it. Get that shit out there. But, and that's why, like, I don't, wow, what a fucking tangent. But yeah, like, social justice warrior probably wouldn't agree with me there. They're the ones that want to keep it quiet. But, like, we were talking about earlier, like, he was inspired by Friedman. Like, and, like, I was saying he wasn't well read. Like, he was on an interview, and I can't remember the name of the podcast, but if you look up what I'm talking about, you'll find the podcast. This is a long time ago, probably 2012, I think. But he was on this podcast, and the guy was grilling him really hard. And I think it's why Gary Johnson hasn't done any more podcasts. But the guy was grilling him really hard and calling him out on a lot of the bullshit I'm calling him out on tonight, to be honest with you. But essentially, like, he asked him, like, he was asking about authors first, so he led the question. He was asking, like, some of the people he's read and things like that. And then after, like, he stumbles to bring up some words he's probably heard. So I think he might have brought up Rothbard, but then he definitely brought up Friedman. And I haven't read a whole lot of Friedman. Talk about the meme generation. I haven't read a whole lot beyond some memes about him, but it takes a while to get through some of these books. Give me some fucking credit. But I still believe I hold enough of the fucking principles by reading what I've read that I can call myself it. I'm getting there. Either way, like, so he asks him, like, some of his authors, and then he goes on to be like, so, like, with these authors, like, what has any of them said anything that, like, really, like, corresponded to something you believed? Or essentially asking them that, like, what was some of your favorite things, like, they'd said? And he's like, well, Friedman was the one that, like, designed the withholding tax, and I'm against the withholding tax. And, like, instantly the guy interviewing him was like, whoa, slow down. Like, I don't mean to be a dick here. He didn't say that, but he essentially said he didn't want to be a dick there, but it was Friedman that, like, created the withholding tax. Like, it was his idea, and then it got ran with. So he's quoting his favorite, like, libertarian principle from his favorite libertarian author, touting it as his own agenda. Like, as a fucking politician, he went to politician mode and picked two fucking ear candy words. But the problem with libertarians is that they want to know more about it, and that's what Ron Paul was constantly beating into people's heads. Read this, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How many books did a Bernie tell you to read? What were you going to say? I'm so sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, I was just I was just going to say, I was just alluding to what you said about how he used a regularly used tactic, but he just happened to get caught with his pants down because what he said was the exact opposite of what really
These are the things that like the Hillary Clinton's getting away with so far, like, or the Bernie Sanders got by so far because the Hillary and the Trump campaign were so busy smashing each other. They didn't really smash.
Yeah, they
Bernie
didn't
so much.
Well, that was the other thing that, because when we talked about this the first time, I told you that I had my little sneaking suspicion, and you were totally against it. That Bernie could have in some way, I told you, I put my tinfoil hat on for a second and said, could you conceivably see Bernie having been, a Clinton ally this whole time, just based on the way. And that was one of my, and I know you don't agree with it. I'm not saying that that's what I think. I'm just saying, I wanted to raise that as a possibility because, when you start to open up your perspective more, then
dude, I can totally see it. I don't think they're that smart. I don't think they're that like fucking intelligent. Like, again, like
And it was the only reason I said that was it just would point towards the idea of like, yeah, nobody ever did really give him any shit.
Exactly.
Did they leave him alone because they knew he wasn't going to be there? Did they just seriously not take him that seriously?
Yeah. Even
though he had this great AstroTurf movement.
Maybe they keep doing that and he slides under the rug. I'm scaring myself the more we talk about it. Like, I really am. Like, that's what Bernie did and it worked. And I'm talking myself out of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is it didn't. Look at the formula that you're openly discussing here with sort of how Bernie drew all these voters. Well, it wasn't a very difficult formula, now was it?
No.
It was really pretty much just tell me what I want to hear and tell me that you'll do these things for me that the current institute isn't doing for me. And you don't even really need to support it. You don't need to tell me how it's going to work. You don't need to show me any of the details. Just give me my free shit and we'll be cool. And then leave me alone after you give it to me.
Yeah, they don't. And it works because they're not also saying, read this book and see how easy it is to support my claim. They're literally just like, well, he said it and he's the guy on the pulpit, so it must work out. But they have people on their own party saying this guy's fucking ludicrous. But they ignore that because fucking.
There's no suggestions yet to do your own research and to be well informed. Who was the last politician at all that really went out and encouraged you to learn things for yourself and actually understand?
Fucking question. Are you trying to get me to like? Is there a?
I don't know.
Ron Paul count right here?
Well, okay, I guess yeah. Besides Ron Paul, a run-of-the-mill politician, I should say, like an everyday household name that I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. I can't think of the last time except for some like PC little mouthpiece about getting kids to read. I can't remember the last time I saw a politician, encourage the adult population of this world to become more informed on how its government works, or just in general, just a smarter. It's always, I'm right because, not, here's an issue. Why don't you guys think about how we should solve it?
Yeah.
And let's come together.
Isn't that what a democracy should be?
This is my solution.
Like,
and you need to, this is why you should vote for my solution. Not here's a problem. What do you guys think? Now, granted, you don't want to have 80 million cooks in the kitchen, but still, I don't like the idea of just like, yeah, here's the solution. You can go with this or go against it. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
You feed into like it being a grand scheme of things, but like the way I see it is like, so like you think there's some puppets running the shit.
Well, maybe not. There's like
okay.
I believe that there are
some
some special interest groups, I think, that are able to pull some strings, is the way that I see it.
Right.
And that I don't pretend to even have any idea who the players are in that club.
Right.
But I've seen enough corruption at the lowest levels to not be convinced that once you get up to that level that there's not going to be some people lining their pockets, because I've seen people steal cigarettes working at Meijer when I work, as a teen. You know what I mean? Like, you see people splitting tips off in the corner with their coworker, and they just gave themselves an extra 10. So you mean to tell me there's millions on the table that the people that have the kind of ambition and strive for that power aren't going to potentially be like, hey.
And that's what Ron Paul said, and that's like, again, but like that, he was backed by a lot of other thinkers out there, and I should put out a reading list because I should name them all. But like, there's a lot of thinkers out there that back his claims, and he was just willing to put them out there and say, read these books, See how easy it is. See how they've tricked you into making you think it's difficult.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, I'd like to get into Bill fucking... Anyhow, we'll keep on Gary tonight. Like, I don't like him. Like, I don't think he has any of the right ideas. Like, he has, on top of that, like, no philosophy. Like, I think he's your typical politician. I think he's more focused on winning over, like, being a true libertarian and, like, exploring their own ideas further and trying to back them instead of feeding the meme generation or, like, the fear machine that, like, the 24-hour news media is, like the clickbait, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were willing to tell you to take the time to look into it, but once you saw, like, through it, it wasn't that difficult to understand. Now we're getting into the generation that can just listen to this shit. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really have to look at fucking... You talk about the media being ran by corporations. That's slowly changing through fucking podcasting and shit like that. Like, people are able to get their message out there and get through all of these big government regulations that are limiting it to where the only people that could afford to get into it to a massive audience were limited by the amount of money it costs to enter the market. So I don't really see that market being controlled so much like by 5 corporations, as those are the ones that made the right moves to keep up with the government regulation. They got their fucking like lobbyists in there. Their lobbyists kept pushing the price of entry up once they had either hit the right number or already had it. You know what I mean? So I see the power play being getting into government with your money and then pushing the cost of entry up to make it harder for a little guy to come up and like push you out. Like, the biggest backers of like the air regulations on cars, and a Republican doesn't want to hear because they want to think it's the fucking Greenpeace people, has been the car lobby, because they want to push the price of entry up. They want to make it harder for the smaller business guys to get in there with their cars. Mm-hmm. It's not really that hard in today's generation to build the kind of shit that they're building anymore. You don't have to spend the millions and millions of dollars to get into the market on that principle. What you do have to spend the millions of dollars on are all the safety regulations. So they've turned that democratic, awesome program that the liberals tout into their cost of entry. And the Democrats are supposed to be pro little guy, but here they are fucking being funded by these lobbies that are keeping the little guy out. And then they get to feed it from the taxpayer's pocket through the fucking welfare state. So they don't have to pay for any of it. It's a beautiful, terrible thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to tip your hat at the cleverness of it, I suppose.
Yeah, but I don't think it was like anything driven other than money being influenced by power. And if you just remove the power, if you cut the tree down at the source by everybody, and I think everybody believes in their own personal like autonomy, but I don't think they believe in everybody else's personal autonomy. So like the 24-hour fear machine feeding into the be scared of this guy, be scared of this guy. And now we have Black Lives Matter versus the fucking police. And well, we should probably fucking just get into that one another night.
Yeah, we can maybe cram in a bonus episode tomorrow or Saturday, probably Saturday if it works for you, because yeah, I know that you still had 2 more pages, and I actually had some stuff that I've that's different from the stuff that you researched. I had some stuff I want to bring to the table on that topic, so hopefully we get to it in the next couple of days before the next new thing comes into the news cycle. And
fucking
it's
shit ton of new things. There's the 3 shootings so far. There's a bunch of fucking crazy
shit. Well, that's essentially what I'm saying is hopefully it doesn't get any worse before we get a chance to talk about it, because that seems to be the thing.
It's election season. It's only going to get worse.
Oh, yeah. It just has been rough. I went to a minor league baseball game yesterday, and they had the flags at half-mast, and
they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere, and I get that. And that's not at all what this is about. But what I heard over my shoulder was it was for Baton Rouge is the reason. And somebody behind me made the comment, man, doesn't it seem like they've just been at half-mast for the last 3 months or something along those lines? Shit. Where it's like, doesn't it seem like they just haven't been back up? You know, like, when was the last time you remember them they're not having a moment of silence for something that's happened? And you'd have to go back a minute and then that's what, it used to be every few months something would happen, and now you're getting into a spot where it's like 3 times a week things are happening, or 3 times a week it's really the focus of the media. And that's where I go with, I don't have any problem with 6 companies getting themselves into a position where they own those shares of the market. I'm all about competition. What I have a problem with then is people not realizing that consolidation and thinking that there's variety in the news that they're receiving, and not really understanding where that's coming from and who's paying for their news. Yeah. And stuff like that. That's where I'm all about it. My whole thing is I'm not even necessarily somebody who's going to be against a monopoly. If you win, you win. But
the monopoly so far can only survive when there's men with guns, and that's monopoly on violence. And at the end of the day, that's what the libertarian wants to remove from the state, is that monopoly on violence. So like at the end of the day, there would have been more competitors into the television and the fucking radio market than there are right now. It was licensing laws that limited that. And the licensing laws have grown and grown and grown, and now they're trying to get their hands on the internet. And fucking Nathan's book was talking about it a little bit, but right now they're trying to get their hands on the internet, and they're working every angle they can to get their hands in there.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I try to bring it up every Sunday night with Lou about the censorship. That it seems everybody is up in arms. Everybody has a clear-cut position on how they feel about the Second Amendment. But what people don't seem to be noticing is in most of these speeches where the Second Amendment is brought up, they also talk about this person was radicalized through the internet. Maybe we should look at, we got to find ways to stop this. And so what I see,
do you think those news corporations that are putting those out there don't already know to be putting that in there?
Oh,
if they start the censorship laws, like
that's beautiful for them. But that's what scares me, is that seems to be the foot in the door. To where once you use it to take care of what is a legitimate problem, then my whole thing is, how many times when you see the government stick its foot in the door, does it give your freedom back to you? I haven't seen it.
The end of Prohibition is the last time I can think.
The end of Prohibition
was that before or after the women's vote? Jesus Christ, I should know that. Probably after. Jesus Christ.
But so you see, that's what scares me, is that let's say if this internet censorship continues, you and I might lose this right that we have because of this topic. Our whole channel someday could get shut down because we decide to broadcast your show and they don't like what you're saying. Right. And how hard is it then for them to just say that you're a terrorist because if you make, for instance, one of the articles I will pull up here was about, and now this is an extreme. This was a guy got arrested in Louisiana, but because of posting about something he posted on Facebook. Now, granted, what he posted was kind of a threat, because he said cops in St. Charles are gonna be next. I hope they kill every last one of them. Dirty B something easy. So bitches, I guess that okay. Yeah, it took me a second. I was like, what is it?
The lingo.
No, well, when you throw a Z in there, you really lose me.
Ebonics.
But so this was a thing where it's like, okay, don't get me wrong. What this guy said was crude and pretty vile, and I don't promote at all what he said. But to me, that's not the point. To me, on one hand, if you can be arrested for what you say on Facebook, then has the internet not then become a public place? Because in order for you to be arrested, you not have to either be service. It's a private. So unless Facebook called the cops and said, "I'd like you to arrest this," okay, then maybe that's what it is.
Was committed.
Well, even still, yeah, exactly. What
means
he didn't even say I was gonna? Yeah, exactly. Then so now what I was you made my point for me. What I was getting at is what stops. In a generation, in a world where people they use Facebook as their journal. They don't journal anymore. They put all their bullshit and dirty laundry on the internet.
And that's how we know so much about the founding fathers' bullshit. Is they have journals about their stupid shit, and then when they died, we saw them.
And then when they die, you get your shit out there. But yeah, and so for me, it's like then this just makes any person, any American citizen, one bad afternoon away. This guy's on bail for $25,000. He's facing some serious charges. Right. He is, I want to quote them verbatim here because I think that's important, has been booked with terrorizing and threatening a public official, that's the other thing that's an interesting dynamic to this for me is, have you heard ever since the Louisiana shooting, they want to turn any officer-related crime into a hate crime.
It's not already?
Which, no,
I thought they were already a protected class.
But that's the point. They're already a protected class. So what does, like, for instance, if you assault a police officer, it's going to be a long time. Like, for instance, no matter what the state, if you murder a police officer, you can be federally executed. They will extradite you and put you in a state where it is okay to put you down. Okay? So they have the ability to do that. So why then does it need to be also classified as a hate crime? Because to me, what happens then is if you get mad at a cop who pulls you over or who arrests you for flipping him off, and then you get angry as you retaliate and talk to yourself, or not talk to you, try to defend yourself and talk to him, then what's to stop one of these bad apple cops from saying, well, this guy threatened me, throw his ass in jail for the next 25 years. And that's why I don't like seeing it. And this is one of those things I keep talking about. We're so reactionary now. Yeah. Where it's like we see a handful of problems in a week, and it's just like, well, the first solution that's thrown at us, we just jump behind, and somehow there's always a solution ready. You know, it's always there's always a legislative solution ready to go, and that's my problem. Where it's like that's where I see like this opportunism, where it's like, you know, they just wait to see something that can be used to promote an agenda or a platform. Right. And
they want to keep us separated. And like that sells.
And this is feeding all right into it. And
but your concern is fucking police are going to have special rights, or
my concern is potentially that not that they have special rights. No, I mean I think that they already do. I think that it's classified highly enough, like you said, it's a special class. I don't think it needs that extra, because that goes all the way down again to where in a situation with law enforcement, it's your word versus theirs, and it's always going to be their word. So I don't like a situation where unless you have
fighting body cameras.
You in a situation where it's you versus the officer, the burden of proof is no longer really on the state. It's on you then to prove that you're innocent,
because they already have the presumption of innocence.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Yeah, and so that is what it I feel like it instantly will put us in a box when we get into those positions where, say, you feel like you've been wrongly arrested and you're defending yourself, and then all of a sudden this guy's a terrorist now.
Okay.
Now, granted, what this guy did, you could make the argument and say, okay, if you want to make that argument, you can say the things that he said were more terrorist driven. But if it's just a verbal conversation between you and an officer that's not on record,
right?
Well,
you're going to be presumed
guilty.
So if he says you said some shit, you're going to have said that shit.
And you could be booked as a terrorist.
Yeah.
For trying to, for instance,
and you know, if they book you as a terrorist, you can be legally now detained indefinitely without charges. So as soon as they get to call you that terrorist, and is that what they're trying to do here? Is basically make you a terrorist if you threaten the police?
Yes.
Is that what
that's essentially? Well, they're going to make you. I mean, it's going to be the same as a hate crime. It's going to be the same.
Well, hate crime is the same thing as being labeled a terrorist.
Well, but okay, so the reason I'm with terrorist is that's example specific. Oh. This guy is specifically being charged for terrorism.
Jesus fuck. Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Terrorizing and threatening a public official. So that's what I wasn't speaking in general terms. I'm speaking in this case specifically. He's a terrorist. Yeah.
Is it like a test of the courts?
I'm not sure. I noticed that all of a sudden there have been 3 or 4 instances now since Dallas of people being arrested for posting their opinions. Yeah. And my whole thing is I'm a big fan on the freedom of speech, and you might say some shit that I think is vile and disgusting, and I might want to beat the shit out of you for it. But freedom of speech isn't there to protect popular speech. Mm-hmm. It's not there to protect common thought. And so
that's what the Nazis used to be allowed to push their agenda.
And so again, this example, it puts you in a weird spot because what he said is kind of infringing upon other people's rights. So but what I'm suggesting is this real problem, a foot gets put in the door. What stops that door from becoming further open? And to me, a regulated internet, like there's some UN proposals for an anti-propaganda legislation to really, it could end up making it to where you would be required a UN government ID to log in to the internet. With that, now they're in stage 1, but that is one of the solutions that they have discussed. So,
do they have any super delegate support?
The last I read about this article, it had just been proposed.
Okay.
It was just on the floor. It hadn't been passed.
Somalia can propose something. That's the danger in that, and the Alex Joneses don't point that shit out, but you might want to look into who proposed it. Because it could have been one of, like, the Saudi Arabias of the world that's still those kind of totalitarian regimes that sneak their foot in the door at the UN. They can propose whatever they want.
Yeah.
In the UN, you get to propose your bill. So I'd see who proposed that in their agenda.
And you're absolutely right. There's an example of that in our own government. What was the guy's? There's a
Bernie Sanders.
No, there's a Democrat from New York who, for 6 or 7, I have all this research. I did this for a past project. Who 5 or 6 Congresses in a row brought to the floor legislation to repeal the 22nd Amendment, which is the 2-term limit for the president. Over the span, 3 different presidents served. So it's like, you know what I mean?
It was modeled on European fucking democracy is what the UN was modeled on. So apply that same shit to the UN.
Yeah.
Essentially. But instead of a congressman from...
Right. Wherever. So, yeah, like, to sort of validate what you're saying, yeah, every once in a while you just have a guy that's going to just throw his idea out there every single year, no matter what. Yeah. And it never even, it never leaves the floor, but they're going to propose it every time.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's
China.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been. And I'm not saying it's a legitimate thing, but I'm just saying, put yourself hypothetically, it's being discussed now. So think about 5 to 10 years from now, if things go at the certain pace that they're going as far as terrorism and hackers and all that kind of stuff. Like, things are only going to potentially be more combustible, to where at some point there could come a time where the internet gets regulated, and then you really, because the internet is our last hope right now for open sources of education and different alternate media, news, and all that stuff. Like, what happens if you can't even start surfing the web internationally or something, where you lose the ability to read.
Which countries have already implemented.
Yeah, which
talk
China
about
is
socialism. Look at fucking North Korea, China, that kind of shit. Look where the fucking most closed fucking internets are. It's under the most democratic of fucking principles. It's fucking, they use the government, but then you need that extreme nationalism. But it's such a stupid idea from the get-go. You can't have people looking outside. But it's fucking incredible.
Yeah. and the whole thing. Yeah, and I do kind of, I hope we get to have at least another hour or so this weekend to try to get another one in, because we won't be able to bring this up at the Sunday afternoon.
I don't think so.
It'll dampen things.
Yeah, no doubt.
It will be pretty exciting though. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. Do you want to tell anybody about it before?
Tell anybody about what
we're doing on Sunday?
Oh, Sunday on Bread and Circus, we're gonna have 3 girls from Sucker Magazine. They're gonna call in. So for the 3 hours of that, we'll be talking to them about their magazine and what brought them together, and probably a whole bunch of other stupid shit that has nothing to do with it. But
yeah, calling in from California.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Hopefully the connection stays strong. And with that being said, if we have a later start time than usual, that will be why, because us starting at our usual noon would have them at 9. So you may expect a later release schedule for both shows on Sunday, just so you fans know that. The fan knows that.
Yeah.
that one guy that keeps liking all of our videos. No.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes and see what. Oh, if we start at noon, they'd have to be in. But yeah, don't expect it to be out at noon.
Look for us the late afternoon. The late night show will be really late night, and I'll just make up my sleep on Tuesday. It's fine.
That's incredible. But no, it should be fun. In the meantime, if you're listening to this or you check it out before Sunday, go to suckermagazine.com and look them up. See what they're all about, because I haven't looked into it yet. They look pretty sweet. This is 6 Secret Radio. We're on the Bad Dinner Guest Network, and we'll catch you all later.